You should know that in Singapore, most properties are on a 99-year lease. So what really happened after 99 years? Well, watch on because you'll realize that it might not be what you expect. So, for a start, you need to know what a leasehold is. In Singapore, over 80% of the land is state-owned. So, when you buy a property here, in most cases, you are not buying the land forever. You are buying the right to use it for a certain number of years. You see, there are 3 types of property tenure here. First is freehold, meaning you own it forever. You can pass it to your great-great-grandchildren if you want. If your great-great-grandchildren outlive Singapore lah.
Don't need to think so much. I think our viewers don't even have a girlfriend.
The second is 999-year leasehold, which is so long that it's basically treated like freehold. However, the government stopped granting 999-year leases a long time ago. And the third, which is the most common one, is the popular 99-year leasehold. So nowadays, if you buy a new BTO, a new launch condo, or basically any property on government land sale, it's likely 99-year leasehold. And all HDB flats are 99-year lease. Here's the part people don't like to hear. When the 99-year lease expires, the land goes back to the state. And the SLA has no obligation to compensate you. So, has this actually happened before in Singapore? Yes, it has. In 2017, SLA made a landmark announcement. 191 private terrace houses at Geylang Lorong 3 will be returned to the state when their lease expire on 31st December 2020. Now, these houses were not on a 99-year lease. These houses were on 60-year lease that started in 1960 or 1961, which meant they were built before Singapore became independent. You see, they were originally built by the colonial government to house families displaced after a massive fire destroyed their attic homes in the 1950s. At that time, each unit was sold for just $4,850, which, adjust for inflation, is about $18,000 in 2019 money. So, fast forward 60 years, the lease was up, and SLA's position was very clear. No compensation, no extension. The land will be returned and the house demolished to make way for new public housing as part of the plan to rejuvenate the Geylang area. This was the first time in Singapore's history that residential properties were returned to the state upon lease expiry. So everyone was watching very closely. Will the authorities punch chance? Will the authorities U-turn? Will the authorities compensate these people? Will Gong Bilang go by Goh and post a video of herself passing the Goh to the residents there? Now, by the time of the announcement, most of the original owners had already moved out over the years. Only about 40 of the 191 units were still owner-occupied. The rest had been rented out, many to foreign workers or used for religious activities. So basically, the owners were earning money from the units because just so you know, it's rather common to see private landed property, especially the older estates, being rented out to foreign workers or used for religious activities. The government did assign a dedicated SLA officer to each household to help guide them through the relocation process. SLA worked with HDB to make sure all owner-occupants found alternative housing. Some bought HDB flats, some went to the resale market, and for those facing financial difficulty, rental flats were arranged. By January 2021, all 191 units had been vacated and returned to the state. Demolition was completed by early 2023. The site is now earmarked for future public housing. So no, there's no compromise and there's no U-turn. Now, here's the thing. If you own a HDB, there are some things you can do before the lease run out. If you have been watching my videos, you'll know about VERSE, the Voluntary Early Redevelopment Scheme. If you have not watched, then I hope that when you buy 40, the number tells you, and when you order Grab food, your soup will You see, VERSE is designed for HDB flats that are around 70 years old. VERSE is voluntary, whereby when flats reach the age, residents in the precinct will vote on whether to sell their flats back to the government for redevelopment. VERSE hasn't started yet, and the first VERSE exercises are expected in the first half of the 2030s when more flats started to reach the 70-year-old mark. Apart from VERSE, there's another option that already exists, the Lease Buyback Scheme, or LBS. Instead of focusing on the age of the flats, this one is for residents aged 65 and above. Under LBS, you can sell the tail end of your flat lease back to HDB while continuing to live in the flat. The money goes into your CPF retirement account and is used to join CPF Life, which gives you a monthly payout for life. You can also get an LBS bonus of up to $30,000 depending on your flat type. Now, how about private property? If you are looking to advertise your business in this channel, we can help you. There are guaranteed views and many big brands have trusted us. Just click on the link in the description. For private leasehold property owners, the situation is a bit different. You have two options. The first is to apply to SLA for a lease top-up, basically paying a premium to extend your lease back to 99 years. The amount is determined by SLA's chief valuer based on factors like how many years are left and whether the extension fits the government's land use plans. But, and this is a big but, SLA is not obligated to approve the top-up. If the government has other plans for the land, your application can be rejected. And even if approved, the premium can be so expensive that people might as well just buy a new property lah. The second option is an en bloc sale, also known as a collective sale. This is where all the owners in the development collectively sell to a developer, usually a property company that wants to tear down the old building and build something new. The developer then pays the premium to SLA for a fresh lease. Now, if neither option works out, that's when the lease expires and the land goes back to the state. No compensation, same as what happened at Geylang Lorong 3. Now, it's not just residential properties that face this. Commercial and industrial properties are in the same boat, and often their leases are much shorter. For example, many industrial properties in Singapore are on a 30-year or 60-year lease, and when the lease expires, the same thing happens. The land goes back to the state. And since the leases are often so short, there has been numerous cases of lease expiring, and they are rather common. They won't make it to the news because, who cares if a rich company lost a property they just bought 30 years ago? What content can I make with that, yeah? But anyways, as you can see, the stand is clear. Once the lease is over, the lease is over. You can cry all you want, post 2,000 TikTok videos or blame the world, but once the lease is over, the lease is over. To know more about verse, whereby HDB flats can be collectively sold back to the government before the lease is up, watch this. Also, if you want to advertise with us, even as a standalone video, do contact us. Thank you for spending almost 6 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope you learned something.